fastest show in sports.
The Bill Belichick disaster just gets worse and worse every single week. I have told myself, matter of fact, before we put the show together, I was telling myself, look, I really don't want to talk much about Bill Belichick because we've talked about it ad nauseum. But when local television stations in North Carolina start to dig deep and they find out what's really going on in this program, you've got to start asking some serious questions.
A divided locker room, disaster on the football field, and claims of a disorganized mess behind the scenes. Only on WRAL, this is just the start of the problems for Bill Belichick and North Carolina football. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ashley Rowe.
And I'm Gerald Owens. Parents and players point to a sea of culture problems as the team was blown out this weekend by Clemson in their ACC opener. Pat Welter joins us now with details you will only see on WRAL. Pat?
Yeah, Amir, and there's no culture, no organization. It is a complete disaster. Those are the kind of quotes I'm getting from sources with firsthand knowledge of the inner workings of Bill Belichick's football program. So we talked to players, parents, members of the coaching staff, the board of trustees, and the athletic department to try to paint a complete picture of what's going on behind the scenes here. According to sources, a divide formed naturally when Belichick was hired. Background players versus the transfers. The way Belichick has run the program hasn't bridged the gap. It's only made it grow. According to multiple sources, UNC has a divided locker room, a disorganized staff, and an overall failure to communicate. A divide is natural when you have Mac Brown-era players and the 70 new ones Belichick brought in. But according to sources, preferential treatment and a lack of leadership has added to the discontent. One source said they don't fault the players. They fault the leadership that created this toxic environment. There's an individualistic mindset. Here are the example sources shared with us. Some players and their parents have better parking and stadium access on game days. Players who miss class and meetings aren't being held accountable. Players are selling their spare game tickets rather than sharing them with teammates. The non-travel roster players don't get to dress for home games, something you might see from an NFL practice player, but not in college football, adding to an overall lack of unity within the team. Parents say they have zero communication with coaches and were asked not to approach Bill Belichick, a stark contrast from the open-door approach of Mac Brown. One source said the lack of experience the coaches have is ridiculous. Belichick himself has been praised by multiple sources for his one-on-one coaching. It's his ability to run the program that's being questioned by parents and players. One source said, Bill shuts people out. He's limited in what he says. Chancellor Lee Roberts preached patience when discussing Belichick at a Board of Trustees meeting last week. Even after the Clemson loss, the feeling within the UNC athletic department remains the same. Given the investment they've made, patience is the path, but they also understand that they hired Belichick knowing he didn't have college experience. They would like to help support Belichick and the players. Belichick needs to be willing to receive it at the same time. Overall, the feeling from sources is that the little points of division have become big, and you're seeing it now on the field. Now, you don't need anonymous sources to tell you there's no energy, very little communication on the sidelines. You can see it with your own eyes. We've reached out to Belichick's PR staff. They chose not to comment.
Look, here's the bottom line. You are never going to tell Bill Belichick what to do. That's the bottom line. Belichick came into North Carolina from the New England Patriots. In the Patriot style, it was his way or the highway. That's it. So if North Carolina actually thought that by hiring Bill Belichick they were getting a partner, then they're more naive than anybody could have possibly imagined. He's not anybody's partner. Bill is Bill's own leader, and Bill will tell you what to do. Bill Belichick has created an incredible, unmitigated, unflailing disaster at Chapel Hill right now with the North Carolina football program. When you piss the parents off, you're in big trouble. And with all the favoritism that apparently is going on in that locker room right now, Belichick has just destroyed what was there. Look, let's be honest. What was there was not great. North Carolina had a lot of issues. North Carolina was never going to contend for a conference championship, certainly not a national championship. So they wanted to spend money, and they wanted to bring in somebody who had a championship pedigree, if you will. Belichick's championship pedigree is from professional football, which does not equate to college football. You can make the jump from college to pro, sometimes, Urban Meyer, but you simply cannot make that jump if you've never done it before from pro to college. It doesn't work. It's an entirely different system. And Belichick came in and decided that this is the way things were going to be. He has failed. All right, this is the one thing what Belichick needs to understand. He's failed. Now, it's early in the process. He could be there for 2, 3, 5 seasons, turn this program around, and who knows, North Carolina could actually contend in a couple of years. Which ain't going to happen because they're rudderless right now. It started at the top with North Carolina, who thought that they could bring in Belichick and save the program. They could just throw money at him. But what you have to remember is you have the Belichick ego, the Belichick arrogance, the Belichick hubris. I've been there. I covered this team for 4 years. I was around the culture that he created in New England. And it was a great pro culture, but it doesn't work in college sports. The other thing that we have to bring into the fold here is, why did Belichick take a college job? Because no one in the National Football League wanted him. It's that simple. Belichick had aged out. He had his way of doing things. And the other franchises who looked at him said, that's not what we need. We don't need an old guy, even with all his Super Bowl championships. We need somebody who comes in and who can actually relate to the players of today, which Bill couldn't do. Bill Belichick had a ton of excellent assistants, and these were the guys who helped make sure that things stayed calm down in the locker room. Belichick didn't give a shit about what happened in the locker room. He barely knew what went on. A lot of head coaches don't, but Belichick had no idea what was happening with the players. You know why? Because he handed off that responsibility to the assistant coaches and to his players. That's why you had guys like Tom Brady, guys like Rodney Harrison, Teddy Bruschi. These are the guys who basically took the locker room and controlled it and kept things calm. Anything happened, you take it up to Bill. But they didn't want to do that. They kept everything in-house. Belichick was completely detached from his players in the pros, and you can get away with that in the National Football League. You cannot get away with that in college athletics. It simply doesn't happen. When UNC decided to throw money at Belichick, which is exactly what they did, giving him all the control that he possibly wanted, they missed a couple of key points. One, Belichick had never coached in college before, which basically should have been the red flag right there, because you have to have an idea of how to run a program. This isn't a team. This isn't a franchise. This is a program. It's entirely different. They then had to realize that they were getting a guy who would not listen. He doesn't take orders. He doesn't take commands. Look, he has his own public relations staff. At college, you have what's called the Sports Information Department, which is your public relations. Everything goes through the SIDs. Not in North Carolina. Bill's got his own public relations people. He can tell people to fark off and walk away, and he can not have to deal with anybody. He just lets his PR people, Jordan, hello Jordan, deal with it, and then he can just go about his business. He's arrogant. He's a totalitarian in many ways. But then we go to the next step in all of this. Is it possible that Bill Belichick simply was the most overrated head coach in National Football League history to win multiple Super Bowls? Now, I say that, and there's a part of me that can't even believe that's coming out of my mouth, because look, how many Super Bowls does he have? The guy's a legend. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's got Super Bowl trophies that he can put in his bathroom. But was he overrated? Was it the fact that he had Tom Brady? Can we then take for the fact that nothing happened before Brady and nothing happened after Brady, which showed that Belichick basically had feet of clay when it came to being this great coach? Look, he might be a great organizer, but his great coaching still came from his assistants, guys like Josh McDaniels. These are the guys who put together the offenses, the defenses, the special teams. Did Bill get in there every now and then and coach? Sure, I'll bet you he talked to some of the players like he's trying to talk with some of the college players. But I honestly don't believe that Bill Belichick gets involved in the X's and O's and the basic grunt work, because he hands that off to other people. He's done the same in North Carolina. Bill Belichick and UNC have destroyed their program right now. The question is, does he need to get out? The question is, does he want to? Look, there's still the unanswered question as to why a guy like Bill Belichick would want to go to college. I already mentioned one of the reasons why. Nobody in the NFL wanted him. Don't take this that Bill didn't want to take certain jobs. The jobs that he wanted, the big jobs, wouldn't touch him. Wouldn't touch him because they knew what they were getting themselves involved in. They knew the kind of guy that he was. They didn't want him with their franchise. They wanted somebody else. They wanted somebody who could talk to the younger players, which Bill can't do, and he can't do at college either. It is an unmitigated disaster at Chapel Hill. Everything's going to come out. We're all going to hear all of these stories from parents and boosters and players. And the other side of it is players. The players don't want to play for Belichick. You got a group of players there right now who don't want to play for him. And you got players that he brought in who don't care. They're not going anywhere. And you've got players sitting out there in the transfer portal who go, what? Go to play for Bill Belichick at North Carolina? Why would I want to do that to my career? I only get a couple of years. I want to go play somewhere where I can have a chance to actually win games and maybe where I can have a chance to contend for a national title, and that's not Belichick. Bill Belichick has destroyed his reputation. Let's be honest. When history looks back at Belichick, there's the people who are going to say, he won Super Bowls. He was a multiple Super Bowl winning head coach in the National Football League. He won a tremendous amount of games. He didn't win the most, which is something that still grinds on him because he really wanted to catch Don Shula. That's not going to happen. But with all that greatness that Bill did, he went to North Carolina and screwed everything up. He screwed up the players. He screwed up the program. He screwed up the school. He screwed up the boosters. He screwed up the parents. He screwed up everything. Lock, stock, and barrel. And he screwed up his reputation because he had an excellent reputation. Well, he's still a son of a bitch in many ways. He's not the guy you'd want to go out and have a beer with because he doesn't have the personality for it. But he's ruined his reputation because he couldn't stay away. He couldn't get off the wheel. He couldn't get off the horse. He had to get on there. He had to prove that he could do it at college. You can't. You're done. You're out. Unfortunately, it's going to come at the careers of a lot of good college players. And it's going to come to all those fans who thought they were getting something special, but you're not. You're just getting a retread. He's not that good in college. And he's not that good a coach anymore. And maybe he never was.
Ed Berliner, the fastest show in sports.